Well, hello, and welcome to this episode of Learn Everyday English, your roadway to English proficiency. Again, hey, glad to have you with me on today's episode. But before I jump into what we're going to talk about today, you know that you need to do 3 things for me. 1, like, subscribe to the channel, and hey, tell your friends about it, so that they can benefit from these videos too, just like you. We have an interesting topic today, and it's actually a topic or subject that was recommended by a viewer. And I think that's because there's been a lot of things in the news for the past several months here in the United States that has caught the attention of the world, caught the attention. That means people are noticing what's going on here. And it has to do with gun violence. And there was a major shooting at an elementary school in a town called Uvalde, Texas, and where a lot of children and some teachers were killed. So I'm going to talk about what's going on here in the U.S. with guns and gun violence. And I know we have a unique problem here that's different from any other country in the world, and you might be asking yourself, hey, why is that? What's going on in the U.S. that makes it maybe such a dangerous place to live? Or why do these incidents are like occurrences or happenings, why do these incidents keep happening here in the U.S.? And why don't you see these types of things happening in other countries? Or why don't you see them happening as often in other countries? So I'm going to kind of try to touch on, or we say maybe to hit or to talk about various things that may help to explain what's going on. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is, and to give you some context, like to give you some knowledge and area of where the problem occurs, or what is maybe a driving force or contributor to these issues here in the United States, and that has to do with something called the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is something that's in the Constitution, and it gives certain rights to people that live here in the United States. And I'm just going to read what the Second Amendment says. And it's very, very short, but listen to what it says. It says a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So that's pretty much, that's what the Second Amendment says, and this is where maybe the problem or the controversy comes from. But again, it says a well-regulated militia, and a militia is just a group of private citizens. Like if you live here, you're a citizen of the U.S., it's like people like me or people like other United States citizens who train for military duty in order to be ready to defend the country in times of emergency. So that's what a militia is. So basically, it's just a group of U.S. citizens, and the government says, okay, you have the right to have some arms. Arms are another word for weapons, like guns and rifles. And to help like the country, to assist the country in a form of military duty in an emergency. So that's kind of what the Second Amendment was really for, to have citizens help protect, defend the country in a military fashion in times of emergency. At the end it says the right to keep and bear arms. To bear means to like to have or to keep or to hold something. So it says they have the right to make basically have arms. And like I said, arms are not these. Arms are another word for weapons. Weapons like guns or rifles. And that right shall not be infringed. Infringed, and infringed means like to take away something or limit. So it says the right of the people shall not be limited to have weapons, or the right will not be taken away. So this is where the controversy. So the maybe more the people that are gun control advocates. An advocate is somebody that likes to argue for a certain position. So there are two sides: gun control, and they want to try to control or limit the guns and how they're used in the country. And they're the people that want to just have anybody can have a gun. So the gun control people say, hey, look, if you read the Constitution, really it's the Second Amendment really is pertaining to or is about people having guns or weapons or arms in mainly the context or the situation where they will be able to use them to help protect the country in an emergency. But the people that want to say, well, anybody can have a gun and use it, they're saying, well, no, we interpret the Second Amendment differently. And they say, well, the militia really means just the American people. Anybody who's an American citizen, they can have a gun, and you don't have to use it just for emergency purposes to help defend the country, because now we have an army. And I'll give you some background on the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment was written the way it was way back when, a long time ago, when the U.S. did not have an army or military force. So the founding fathers of the country, I guess, thought, well, if we have an army, it might be a little bit dangerous, because then the government, the federal government, could possibly use the army to oppress the people, to maybe do certain things to the people, to try to control the people. And they thought, well, that's not a good thing. So instead of having an army, we'll just have militias or militia groups of people in every town, and they can have weapons and they can help defend the country. So that's how it was formed, and that was the context in which the Second Amendment was written. But since then, I guess after the U.S. Revolutionary War, the country found out that really having militias was not a good way to protect and defend the country. So eventually, they did form an army. So you can see the Second Amendment is somewhat obsolete. It doesn't really apply today as it was intended to back in the day or a long time ago when it was really written. So that's kind of some background on the Second Amendment. So there are two groups in the country: the people that are, pro-gun, and those are that want to control the use of guns. And there's a pro-gun group called the NRA, which is an abbreviation, which stands for the National Rifle Association. So it's kind of a group, an organization that people that have weapons or arms or guns and rifles can join. And, they do some good things. They help to promote maybe the use of guns, maybe in a safe manner. But their main objective is to promote guns and have, more people buy guns. And it's become a very political situation. So that is the National Rifle Association. So they look at the Second Amendment and they interpret it very differently, like I told you before. And, they say, well, a militia is just anybody, a U.S. citizen. The right to keep and bear arms means that anybody can have a gun. They can use it maybe for kind of whatever purpose that they want. And the Second Amendment says the right shall not be infringed, so the federal government, according to them, has really no say. They cannot tell you what you can and can't do with your gun. So as you can see, we have two diametrically opposed groups. Groups that want to have some type of gun control, groups that say no, it's the right of every American to be able to own a gun and use it for whatever purpose they want, and the federal government can't tell them what to do. So these two groups are fighting, and sad to say, but it has evolved or turned into kind of a situation where it has become political, because the majority, you find that the gun control people more so are Democrats here in the country, and more of the people that want to have, say, no control of guns are the Republicans. So those are the two main political parties in the U.S. So they are opposed to each other, or say at odds to each other. They're kind of fighting against each other. But the National Rifle Association, let me give you some history about that group. It formed in 1975, and it was formed as a lobbying group to influence government policy. So to lobby, I'll give you a definition. A lobby is a group of people who band together, we say, or to come together and try to influence people in public office. So they try to influence the politicians here in the country to support and pass legislation and regulations that favor their position. So they basically are people that go in and talk to politicians and say, hey, you need to support legislation or laws or regulations that support our viewpoint, that you shouldn't limit the guns or access to guns or how they're used. And they have become a very powerful and influential group or organization here in the country. And they've become now one of the most powerful lobby groups in the U.S. and have a lot of influence with members in Congress in Washington, D.C., with senators and representatives, and even the president. If you have kept up with U.S. politics, the NRA was very close to our former president, Donald Trump. And that's why he didn't really want to do anything to try to control the use of assault rifles or weapons, and I'm going to get into that later. So the NRA lobbies against, or they try to argue against all forms of gun control. And they say that, hey, more guns in the country makes the country safer. More guns, because more people have guns. If there's a criminal or if there's a bad guy, people with guns can maybe shoot the bad guy and solve the problem. But as we have seen with a lot of these mass shootings at these elementary schools, usually people with guns either aren't around or they're there, but they either don't shoot the bad guy or they don't shoot him or kill him quickly enough. And I'm going to talk about the Uvalde incident. So now I'm going to talk about, well, what are the weapons or the arms or the guns that are people talking about here in the United States. And a lot of it has to do, and it centers around a specific weapon that's called an assault rifle. And specifically, it's called the AR-15. And that's what is used in a lot of mass shootings. Mass means like a large group of, so a shooting that involves a large group of people that are killed is called a mass shooting. And people use these AR-15 rifles because they can, we say, inflict or cause the maximum amount of damage, or basically maximum amount of killing in the shortest period of time. So they can really inflict a lot of damage very quickly. Because these are rifles or weapons that were kind of modeled after weapons that are used in war. So they were designed to kill a lot of people very quickly. So there's a lot of outrage, or outrage means anger, as why can a U.S. regular person like me I can go out if I want to. I can buy an AR-15. Why do I need an AR-15? The gun control people will say. But the NRA will say, well, it's your right, Gary, to go out and buy an AR-15 if you want to. But the gun control, the opposite side, they will say, Gary, why do you need an AR-15? What are you going to do with that? And, they say, well, you can't really go hunting with that because if you shoot an animal, the animal is going to be destroyed because of the powerful nature of the bullets. So is there really a benefit, So that's where the argument comes from. And the gun control people want to try to limit who can buy an assault rifle AR-15. So they want to raise the age limit from 18 to 21. And some people even want to say outlaw the ability to buy an AR-15, saying that no one should be able to even buy an AR-15. So this is the controversy and what people are fighting for. But the AR-15 was recently used in the Uvalde shooting at the Robb Elementary School. And the shooter actually just turned 18 years old, and he bought the AR-15 rifle. That's what people say, well, see, we should limit AR-15 rifles, and we should raise the limit from 18 to 21, so this person would not have been able to buy an AR-15 when he turned 18. And another thing that you might not know is interesting, I can go out and buy an AR-15, and they range in price here in the U.S. from $400 to up to maybe around $2,000. So if you got that money, you can go out and buy you a AR-15. But the gun industry, the people that manufacture, make the guns and promote the use of guns, and gun owners and their supporters say, well, the AR-15s aren't that bad, and the regular people should be able to buy an AR-15 because they are used for hunting, like I said, which I don't really understand. Most people don't use them for hunting. They are used for target practice, and target practice means you can shoot something to practice your aim. You shoot at a target, or they're used for shooting competitions. And so they should remain legal. And also the gun rights groups and the gun control groups, they spend a lot of money to try to influence public opinion. So for example, in 2020, the year 2020, the gun rights groups, or the groups that want people to buy weapons, spent about $32 million, while the gun control groups that want to limit the guns in the United States spend about $23 million. So each group is spending a lot of money, but as you can see, the groups that promote guns and want to advocate for the use of guns spend more money than the other groups. So that is a difficulty here. People are, we say, bombarded with media from news and on the radio and the TV and newspaper and magazines about the pros and the cons of weapons here in the U.S. And basically, like I said, it boils down to, or it really comes down to one issue, and that has to do with freedom and rights. So here in the United States, we pride ourselves on the freedom or freedoms that the people here in this country have. But I think sometimes it can be taken too far, and we have too many freedoms. So people say, well, I have the freedom, like I mentioned earlier, I can pretty much do what I want to do as far as guns go because I am protected by the Second Amendment, and it gives me the right to own an assault rifle if I want to buy one. So that's the problem here in the U.S. Hopefully you can start to see what is going on here in the States with why there's a problem. So I'm going to go over 3 mass shootings that have happened here in the United States. And a lot of people have heard about them, and it has impacted public opinion. So back in 2012, there was a shooting at an elementary school in the state of Connecticut, and it occurred at Sandy Hook Elementary. And it was kind of one of the first major mass shootings that really made people think and made people maybe scared and say we really need to do something to control the use of these of guns in general, but especially these assault type weapons. And that happened in 2012, where 28 people were killed, most of them children, and 2 people were injured. But back then, there really wasn't much done. There was a lot of talk, but nobody actually did anything. Then in Las Vegas, Nevada, in 2017, at a music festival, there was a gentleman who was in a hotel that was right next to where they were having the music festival. He went out on the balcony and he just started shooting at people using an assault type weapon. And I think he converted a semi-automatic rifle into an automatic rifle. And that was, I think, the deadliest mass shooting in the United States, where 50 people were killed and about 500 people were wounded. And then recently, this year, a month or 2 ago, in Uvalde, Texas, in Robb Elementary School, this kid, basically 18-year-old, bought an assault rifle, and he killed 19 children and 2 teachers. So now, after this last incident in Uvalde, the country, we say, was in an uproar. That means everybody was really angry or emotional, and people were saying, we need to do something now. We need to change our gun laws. We can't continue to keep having these problems. And in the past, the Republican people in the Senate and Congress were reluctant or hesitant, or really didn't want to try to change a lot of the gun laws. So it makes it very difficult to get anything done. But there was enough, say, outcry or outrage or anger. So recently, the government in Washington, D.C., the House and the Senate, passed some gun control legislation. And President Biden recently signed that legislation into law. It didn't get everything that everybody wanted, but it was a big improvement to what we had before, and we were finally able to make some, say, headway. We were able to do something that was good to try to help control the use of guns. So President Biden signed that on Saturday, June 25th. And this is what the gun legislation will do. It says it will expand the background check system. So background checks means, like, if somebody wants to buy a gun or weapon, they will look at the person's history or background, and if there's anything in his life that he's done that may be somewhat dangerous or may not be good for that person to own a weapon, then they can check and try to find that out and not sell the weapon to that person. It's going to set aside or put money, millions of dollars, and give that money to the states so that they can help with mental health and drug courts. The people that have issues with mental health or use of drugs, they can help those people that as needed. They can also carry out the third thing. It's going to be dealing with what's called red flag laws that allows the authorities or the government to temporarily, say, confiscate or like to take from people guns from people that are found too dangerous to actually own them. So maybe people with mental health issues, anger issues, people that have committed a crime, if they want to buy a gun or they found out that they have some issues, the government can actually go in and take their weapons from them. That's called red flag laws. It's going to put more money, federal money, into mental health resources in communities and schools across the country, and sets aside money for school safety. So there's a lot of need in schools where kids need maybe counseling or mental health counseling or help. Schools needs like more security, and there's going to be money for that. And the fifth thing is going to say to toughen or make more difficult the laws against people that traffic guns. To traffic guns means people that sell guns, usually illegally, sell guns illegally, and called buying guns for somebody that can't buy a gun. So say if I want to buy a gun but I can't because the government says I have a problem, I can ask my friend to buy a gun for me. So if that happens, there are going to be tougher laws against people that do that. And the last thing it's going to do is help with something called the boyfriend loophole. So it means that, say, if people are dating and the boyfriend or the guy has abused his girlfriend with domestic abuse or violence, that person may not be able to buy a gun because of his past violent history. So that was the gun control legislation that was recently passed and signed off by President Joe Biden on June 25th. Like I said, there were several other things that people wanted in this legislation. One was raise the limit to buy, the age limit to buy an assault rifle from 18 to 21. That was not approved. That did not get into the bill. And some people, I said, also wanted to ban the sale of all types of assault rifles. That was not approved either. So, we got some things, but we didn't get other things. So it was kind of a compromise. We call it a compromise. But it was good because it was the first time in a long time that significant gun control legislation was actually discussed and passed with Democrats and Republicans working together to come up with some type of improvement to the system. So maybe in the future we can work on having other more stricter gun control laws here in the United States. And finally, I want to just touch on the problem or statistics, what's actually been going on here in the U.S. And according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, a total of 45,222 people, and that's a lot of people, died from gun-related injuries of all causes during the year 2020. And that's the last year for which we have complete data. And the breakdown, we say the breakdown of those numbers is 54% of those people died by suicide. Suicide means that you kill yourself. And 46% died by homicide, which is like they were killed by somebody else. So over 45,000 people died from gun-related injuries here in the U.S. in 2020. And that is an increase of 25% from 2015 and 43% increase from 2010. So you see the increase in gun violence and deaths has just gone up here in the U.S. The U.S. has 120.5 guns per 100 people. So that's more than one gun per person here in the U.S. In comparison, the country with the second highest number of guns is a country called Yemen. They're in second place. They have 50.8 guns per 100 people. So we see the U.S. is just about has twice as many guns as the next highest country. The highest Latin American or Spanish-speaking country is Uruguay, and they are fifth on the list with 34.7 guns per 100 people. And for comparison, Canada, which is our neighbor to the north, is in sixth place with 34.7 guns per 100 people as well. If you ask Americans, 52% of Americans say that they want stricter or more gun control legislation. 35% say it should stay the same, no change. And 11% said the law should be less strict, which I don't understand. If you look at political party, nearly 91% of Democrats are in favor of making gun control laws more strict, more regulation, whereas for Republicans, only 24% want stricter gun laws, And there's a third political group called independents, and 45% of them want stricter gun laws. I'll talk a little bit about the state I live in Texas here. So a number of states has also gone to the extreme, we could say, to eliminate restrictions on, say, who can carry a gun. For example, in June 2021, or last year, our governor, Greg Abbott, signed a law called a permitless carry bill. And that allows residents here in the state of Texas, people like myself, I can carry a gun here on the street with me without a license or without training. And there are other states as well that have done this. There's on April 12th, Georgia was the 25th state in the nation to eliminate the need for a permit to conceal or openly carry a firearm. So there are 25 states in the U.S. where you don't need a permit to carry a gun on you. We say concealed carry. I can have it concealed or hidden. I don't need a permit or a license. So that's the situation here in the U.S. involving guns in America. And so that's, I can say, it in a nutshell, or a kind of a synopsis or a brief overview of what's going on. So to summarize, we have the Second Amendment, which gives the U.S. citizens the right to bear arms, but when it was written, it really pertained, in my view, to militias, giving people the ability to have weapons to assist the government in times of war or in an emergency. But now it's become a thing where it's become a right, a freedom, that anybody can have guns, or as many guns as they want, because it's a right of every U.S. citizen. We have groups that are on opposite sides of gun usage. There's gun control people that want to try to control the use of guns, but then you have groups like the NRA, the National Rifle Association, that just wants to promote the use of guns and not limit their use. And the groups like the NRA lobby with politicians to help pass legislations or laws or rules that are favorable to their position. And they actually contribute a lot of money, campaign contributions, to politicians to try to influence how they're going to vote. So you have this constant fighting back and forth. But now that we see more and more gun violence, more gun incidents, the American people, I think, are getting tired, or we say sick and tired, of seeing children murdered, especially with assault rifles. It's not a big problem, say, with handguns for protection. People are more outraged with people being able to buy these assault style or assault type weapons and rifles, and use those to go in and schools especially, and to kill innocent children. So maybe things will change even more. We say time will tell what the future holds. So I hope you learned something today as to why we're having the problem here in the U.S. So again, if you liked the video, remember you can do 3 things for me. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and 3, tell your friends. Well, that wraps up today's episode about gun control and gun issue in the U.S. I hope you have a good weekend. Rest of the day, we're going to be having the 4th of July here coming up on Monday, and when I'm going to be uploading this video. And enjoy yourself wherever you are and what part of the world you're in. Well, from Learn Everyday English, we'll talk to you later. Hey, goodbye.